Amen. God bless you. Good to see you. Just a quick review, just to bring us up to speed. The appearance of this great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and was pained to be delivered. We came to the conclusion, I take the position, this represents Israel. Remember, there are what they call the law of double reference in prophecy. Prophecies can have more than one application. They're like layers of each other, like looking through two layers of glass at the same time, or two mountains that maybe seem to be close, but they're separated by a long distance. Between verse 5 and 6 of this, there's a 2,000-year span. Verse 5 says, she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. That speaks of Christ in Psalm chapter 2 and in Revelation 19. And a child was caught up to God into his throne. That's Christ's ascension. But then when the woman fled into the wilderness, that's where we're talking about the persecution of Israel. She's been persecuted. The devil has hated Israel forever because that's the nation that brought forth Christ. And we saw in verse 7 there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found anymore in heaven. We talked a good deal about who the devil is. In verse 9, we have 4 titles for him: the dragon, the serpent, the devil, and Satan. We talked about the meanings of those words, what his modus operandi is, what Paul says, when I'm ignorant of his devices. When you know how your enemy does work, it's easier for you to fight him. The smart military commanders got inside the heads of their enemies, knew how they thought, how they felt, what their weapons and tactics were, learned everything about them they could. And the more you know who he is and how he does, the more you know how to fight him effectively. And it says in verse 10, strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. Springs of salvation, strength, and power. There's power has been misused historically as long as the earth has been here. Governments have misused it. Armies have invaded other nations. But when Christ comes, his power will be to bless. There'll be no corruption. There'll be no war. They overcame him in verse 11 by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives into death. That last phrase speaks of their commitment. They were committed, sold out to Christ, ready to die if they needed to. There's a Scottish clan, the Clan Munro, and their clan crest has an oxen. And it says it's standing in front of an altar on one side and a plow on either side. And their motto is ready for either. Ready to work with the plow or ready to die on the altar. And that's a good thing for Christians. We're ready to die if we need to, are we? And we're ready to work on the altar, ready to be sacrificed if we have to. It's about a level of commitment that is absent from a lot of churches today. We have an anemic Christianity in our country, and it's a shame. It shouldn't be. Anybody's excited about something, ought to be God. It ought to be the things of Christ. The family of God and those who have a testimony, and the blood of the Lamb, and the word of their testimony. Now we come to what we're going to be studying today, verses 12 to 17. And he says, therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that his time is but a short time. He's got 3.5 years, the last part of the tribulation. And he has a short time, and he knows it, but his work is going to be more amplified during the tribulation than it was. But remember also that when the church is taken up, the Holy Spirit goes up with it. The Spirit dwells in you. What I think is keeping America from being attacked and overrun is the presence of Christians in this country who are praying for the revival, who are praying for this nation. And that's a restraining factor. And one of the first signs, it tells us we are ambassadors for Christ. And if there's two nations ready to go to war, one of the first things they do is they recall their ambassadors. They bring them home. And the church has gone up, the church is gone. So you don't have the restraining influence of the presence of the Spirit of God. This is evident in other teachings in the Old Testament. There's other types and shadows of this. But that isn't there to restrain. There's nothing to hold him back. He's always been active. And it's a shame that the church is so lukewarm and inactive, but the devil is his restless energy. And his people are restless. They're active. They're working all the time. And his greatest efforts are sometimes at the very end. This is coming down to the very end of this tribulation, of this whole period of the rule of sin on this world. And I was reading that Martin Luther, powerful man of God, had a contest with the devil, and with the Pope, and attempts in his life. He did a tremendous, powerful work. On his deathbed, the devil was beating him up. He had to fight that devil right while he was dying. And boy, did he do it. He drew the sword of the Spirit, and he told that devil where to go. John Knox, I'm about to show April her house, his house in Edinburgh, and St. Giles Cathedral, this marvelous big spiral stone pulpit that he preached from. A great reformer. The same thing, he was dying, and the devil was beating him up. He did the same thing. Drew the sword of the Spirit. He reminded that devil where he was going, and just claimed the victory in Christ. Sometimes he'll beat you up at the end. And we see this pattern. At the end of this whole thing, he's going to do his worst work against the people who were there. Verse 13, it says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast out into the earth, he persecuted the one who was brought forth the man-child. The Jews have always been persecuted. They're the most persecuted nation on earth. And the source of it is always satanic. It is today. I mean, they've been persecuted when they were in Israel. They were persecuted when they were in Babylon. They were persecuted when they were in Europe. They had Hitler and his persecutions of them, and the unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust. You have what's going on today. You see all these things in college campuses that are pro-Arab, pro-Islamic, and against Israel. That's the puppet. The puppet changes, but the hand inside the puppet's always the same. The protesters that are hatred against Israel it's always the same source of it. It's the devil, and when during this time they'll be persecuted more than they ever have. Dr. McQueen was saying in his commentary that people think that they're in Israel now and they're all right. They're not going to get right. The worst persecution is coming, but God will allow them to be victorious as we see that spirit begin to rise up in this verse 14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time. Those are the 1,260 days that Daniel prophesied way back in the 7th chapter. It adds up to about 3.5 years. Remember, the tribulation is about 7 years, 3.5 year period roughly. And for this last time, her greatest persecution is going to come in Exodus 19, verse 4, when they were being persecuted, the Jewish people, by Egypt. And God says to Moses, you have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. So the image of bearing on eagle's wings goes all the way back. We've seen this before. I think in Deuteronomy 32, there's another reference to that. Deuteronomy was that'd be a good book for a Bible study. It's just a remarkable book. Jesus quoted from Deuteronomy more than any other book in the Bible. It was his favorite reference. When he was tempted by the devil in Luke 4, he quoted Deuteronomy every time. As an eagle stirreth up her nest and fluttereth over her young, and spreadeth abroad her wings, and taketh them, beareth them on her wings, so shall the Lord alone lead them in a strange land. These promises, this picture of the eagle, the young men shall fall, those that wait upon the Lord shall mount up with eagle's wings. When an eagle wants to protect its young, the young will crawl on the back of the eagle and it'll fly away. It's a marvelous picture. Into the wilderness, she shall be nourished for that time from the face of the serpent. Verse 15, and the serpent cast out his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And that's a preface for what God does next, what he prophesied he would do when in the Messianic prophecies in Isaiah 59, he says, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall raise up a standard against him. A flood could be, some commentators say it's actually a liquid flood, but sometimes a flood is symbolic of an army. a flood of people. It could be either one of those. And you think here, Daniel 9:26. The second half of Daniel is all prophetic. 9:26. This is the 70 weeks. This is a prophecy, Daniel 9, verses 24, 25, 26. It's all messianic. It deals with these things. But it's very complicated. Let me just read it to you. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem shall the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the Prince shall come and destroy the city and sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. Unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. That's a very deep, complicated thing. Now, this decree was made by Artaxerxes in 457 BC. And the degree from when that was done to the time was this is about 70 weeks, or 70 weeks of years. So that the year that Jesus was born was prophesied right here when it begins. But this, as many prophecies do, they have double references. There's two layers of it. One is his first coming, one is his second coming. Remember, there's 300 prophecies of his first coming, all of which have been fulfilled. There's 900 prophecies of his second coming. Every writer of the New Testament refers to the second coming of Christ. Every writer. And 22 out of 27 books reference him. And that's part of what this is here. That's going to be the greatest event of the ages. So the serpent shall cast off these things. And verse 16 is a mysterious one. And the earth helped the woman. And the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. This is, let me go back to Numbers 16, 31, 33. The best book to explain the Bible is the Bible. For every verse, there's a verse that explains it. And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder them, and was under them, and the earth opened up her mouth and swallowed them up, and their houses and all that pertained to them, to Korah and their goods. This just shows how God could open up the earth. Remember, this was Korah's rebellion against Moses and against Aaron and against Miriam. And there's like 3,000 people that died. The earth was swallowed up and then closed up. I only shared that picture in that because it's so, we need to remember that God can do anything he wants. This is his plan. He can cause mountains to rise, mountains to fall. Mountains to disappear, to split in two. Oceans to rise, oceans to fall. Floods, earthquakes, everything is under his control. I don't understand all these things about the serpents and the flood. But I know that God's in control of this. And where this wilderness is, where she is nourished for a time and a half. So that's 3.5 years. That's the toughest 3.5 years that Israel will ever see. But when that's over, it's over forever. She'll never be persecuted again. At the end of that 3.5 years, this is when we're talking about when Christ comes back. And some of this battle, there are some people who think it may be Armageddon. And verse 17 it's got some wonderful things about verse 17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. We have a reference backwards to the first messianic prophecy in Genesis chapter 3:15. It didn't take long for sin to enter the world, and everything was so good in Genesis, up to Genesis 3, verse 1. That's the whole purpose. Generation is, the book of Genesis is generation from chapter 1 to chapter 3, degeneration from chapter 3 to verses 1 to 14, and then regeneration from chapter 3:15 to the end of Revelation. Sin enters, there's generation of everything beautiful and wonderful and good. It crumbles in these verses when sin enters the world. And then from Genesis 3:15, which is the first answer to it, is regeneration, is the process of building it back up. And the Lord said, this is Genesis 3:14, the Lord said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. There's your first messianic prophecy. If you see the word seed, that means offspring, children. And from that point on, there's enmity, there's hatred, warfare between the seed between man and between the devil. It's pictured right in there. But when he says, it shall bruise thy head, the word bruise there means crush. God formed us. Sin deformed us. Christ transforms us. It begins right there. The whole rest of the Bible is about regeneration, about redemption, about salvation, about finding this rebel called man, about solving once and for all the sin problem. And thank God that comes to pass. But he shall bruise now that he is Christ. Christ crushes the head of the devil, but the devil bruised his heel. You usually don't die from a bruised heel. A crushed head, however, is pretty final. It's even prophesied, you're going to have some success in hurting my son, but the victory is in there too. But also between her seed, the seed of the woman, this is also a picture of the virgin birth, because these things are usually reckoned through the man. But in here it says it's through the woman that will come. And people say, well, the woman, if Eve hadn't taken that fruit, would have been all right. Well, if Eve hadn't done it, Adam probably would have. And yes, maybe it was an Eve that put out the light. Maybe it was a woman that put out the light in the garden, but it was a woman that brought it back again in Bethlehem. Little Mary, what a blessed woman she is, a great woman. What a marvelous story that is. She's just a teenager, but her faith, her purity, her holiness, what a marvelous woman. So the remnant of her seed, the remnant of those who believe, which keep the commandments of God. And I love the way this ends, this chapter, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. The ones who are persecuted are the ones who keep the commandments of God. I think it's 2 Timothy 3:12, which reminds us of something that if you're working for the Lord, you always need to remember. Yea, all they that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. Those that live godly, that keep his commandments. So the devil's not going to bother some lukewarm Christian who just goes to church and toughs out of service, listens to cuss hymns and go home and just lives the way they want. You're not going to have much opposition. But if you want to serve God, the devil will single you out. And every man of God that's ever, I've read their biographies, everyone I can think of, and the patterns are the same. One of the things I love studying about Christian biography, going all the way back to St. Augustine and all the way back to the disciples in the book of Acts, all the way up to Billy Graham and people all in between, Spurgeon and Moody and Hudson Taylor and Robert Moffat and David Livingstone and Adoniram Judson and all these men of God. They all had opposition. They all had things coming against them. You see the same patterns, but you see how God also delivered them of those things. Those which have the testimony of Jesus Christ. But we often hear me say we read the end of the book and we win. That's the truth. Didn't want to spend too long on this. Do we have some contributions? I'm just giving a little sketch here. I'm not going into too much depth here. I'm sort of saving that for these next chapters because we're halfway through Revelation. Now we're coming to the beast with the 7 heads and the 10 horns, the dragon, the lamb beast, the leopard beast, the lion beast. We're going to have a lot of supernatural, very, very spooky characters coming up right around the corner in this next chapter. We also have the mark of the beast, that you can't buy or sell, say you can get. So that's coming up in chapter 13. And that brings us right up to a lot of things that are going on today. Any contributions or any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So if the woman represents Israel, and then it says here that the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments. Is that all the rest of the nations and the countries outside of Israel?
No, these are the Jews.
Or it's,
This is
so this 3.5 years is just the Jews?
Yeah, yeah, and amongst that, and I just remember once that is those 144,000 that are sealed from the 12 tribes of Israel, that the greatest persecution will be against them. That's most commentators take that take on this. Meaning the remnant of her seed there are most of them are the Jewish people. Included in that may be people who have received Christ during this time. You know, the rapture's gone up and they're realizing this whole thing was true. I don't know how those. I just feel bad about those folks. You know, who are a man who's married to a Christian woman. He's not, and she's prayed for his soul, talked with the things. I told her about the end time. Told him about the rapture, and he thinks it's all foolishness. And all of a sudden, not only is she gone, but millions of people all over the world have just suddenly disappeared. How is CNN going to handle that? And NBC and CBS and ABC. How are they going to try to, they're like these riots in Los Angeles, to try to play them down. But it's really not so bad. How are they going to get around the rapture when it happens? Because, I mean, if you happen to be the pilot of a plane, if both the pilot and the first officer happen to be Christians and they disappear, you can have a few planes crashing in the area. You can have cars crashing in the area. You can have somebody who's undergoing heart surgery and the doctor was a Christian. He's gone. Now what happens? I mean, it's going to be a huge event. If you flesh this out, the way this is going to happen, cars piled up in the freeways in Los Angeles because, that bumper sticker, in the case of rapture, this car will be empty, So it's all coming. I think it's exciting. That was a good question here. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, you want to read ahead. Here we go. Jump into chapter 13. We won't pick this up again until July 8th, is it 6th? 9th, July 9th. That will be our next study on this. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, we're going to take a little break here. We'll see you again on July 9th. And so plenty of time to study for that. Praise God.